Guys, it just really, I just want to try to encourage you guys. Like, I got really encouraged yesterday when I'm like really soaking wet. I got really encouraged yesterday when I was teaching the kids about Psalms, about David. Someone sent us one of those really cool Becca book stories, those big flashcard, like cardboard stories about King David. But it started as he became king, so I had to like go and lay the groundwork with Samuel and Saul that I've been teaching on the last several weeks, and just using slides on the TV. We bring this big flat screen out to the Bahay Kubo. So now I was able to use this really cool children's, like this big visuals, you know, the first lesson I got through. So basically, you know, for some reason in my mind I was thinking, I knew David became king at 30, which that blew the kid's mind, because 30 is so far away, you know. Wow, it's a long time to wait, you know. So, and you know, given that he was anointed when he was a youth, you know, he had to wait all that time. And it was just encouraging to me yesterday in the story, because he's basically Saul died, and so David, you know, never took things into his hands, guys. He never, even though he knew he was anointed to be king, he still had to wait on God, 100%. He didn't try to take things into his hands. He doubted a lot of times, but yet he waited for God to work on his behalf, which was amazing. And I think that's why he was man after God's own heart. And I think that's why he was, you know, God recorded all the Psalms for us to see all these, you know, eons later. And it's like, even the stuff I said was prophetic things. A couple things that I'll share with you. So in Psalm 37, which is a great psalm, by the way, too, talking about how God delivered David. But anyways, I'm not sure when he wrote the psalm. I don't know if it was prophetic, but he said to the effect, the wicked, you know, pulls out his sword to slay the righteous, and he bends his bow, and he's like, his own sword will enter into his own heart. And during the week, I thought, that's King Saul. Sorry if I already shared this with you guys. That's King Saul, you know? King Saul was running after David, spending his whole career as king chasing Saul, you know, with his army, or David with his army. And how does he die? He gets wounded. He asks his armor bearer to fall on him, and he won't, so he falls on his own sword. His own sword enters his heart. It is so prophetic what he said, and only God could do that. And God took care of David's enemies, took care of David's problems in his own time, but the way he did it was so masterful. And whenever David tried to take things in his own hand, like to go hide with the Philistines, it all got really weird, and he learned to just trust God, you know, not run ahead of God. So guys, I just want to encourage you that, you know, look at David. So then he becomes king at 30, but he was only king of Judah, and that wasn't even his own deal. Like when Saul died, he didn't be like, okay, now it's my turn. He prayed and said, God, should I stay here in wherever he was at, Ziklag, or wherever, should I go back to Judah, where he was from? And God said, go to Judah, go to Hebron. He goes to Hebron, and the people from Judah immediately anoint him king of Judah. So he has one tribe now. He's the king of one tribe. He didn't say, oh, I wanted the whole thing. I was supposed to be king of Israel, not just Judah. You know, he said no. And he became, and so the next 7.5 years he spends as the king of Judah alone, just Judah. And so he really didn't become king of Israel until he was over 37. So, guys, he had to wait on God, but check this out. So, it's like, just because God does something, his timing is so different than ours. Because David's life was this little blip, and on God's timeline, what David meant to us, though, is so huge. He was sewn into the fabric of this huge plan that God had of Jesus coming from the line of Judah, of David writing these Psalms, which would be, it didn't make sense to him. A lot of his life probably didn't make sense. But God had all that, you know. It's just amazing, and only God could make his life count for what he did, because David, you know, trusted him and waited for him, you know. And so he becomes king of Judah. Then Saul's right-hand man, very powerful general named Abner, still doesn't, you know, is against David, obviously. He wants to carry on the grudge, and so he says, hey, I'm gonna king the next rightful heir to the throne. You know, I was telling kids about King Charles, you know, in England. Well, the next rightful heir was Ishbosheth, Saul's son. So he said, let's make Ishbosheth king. So they make Ishbosheth king of Israel. David doesn't react to that. He doesn't get jealous, angry. He just sticks to Judah. He sticks to what God had given him, and he was just faithful in Judah. And he got stronger and stronger, and the people loved him. And then in the meantime, God was working things where Abner, this general who had probably been chasing David around in the desert this whole time before Saul died, David did not go after him. Abner and Ishbosheth tried to attack them in Judah. They got an army together and they went and attacked them, and they came out looking their wounds, and they lost like 360 men. David lost 20, and out of that ordeal there, after a while, Abner said, "Hey, he remembered that Samuel had anointed David, and he's like, this isn't my grudge, this is Saul's grudge. I know that David's gonna win, David's gonna win." And so in the meantime, in that battle, Joab, David's general, his brother, I think his name is Asahel, he went after Abner and chased him down. He's a really fast runner. He chased down Abner. Abner turns around and sees him chase him and says, "Hey, back off! I don't want to kill you because I don't want any beef. I don't have any beef with. I don't want to have a beef with Joab, your brother." Asahel keeps chasing him and catches him, so Abner kills him out of self-defense. So Joab has a beef with Abner, this evil general. So anyways, but David is never trying to escalate things. So what happened was, had he went after Abner, the one who was trying to kill him again, had he went after Abner, guys, he would have taken out the chess piece that God wanted to make him king. Because Abner eventually comes around to understanding, hey, David is like, the God's chosen. He said, I want to be on that winning side. So he actually goes to David and says, hey, I want to join forces with you, and what I can do for Israel, I can unite all Israel and all my men, and we can get behind you as king of all Israel. That's what he brought. That's the piece that God wanted him to play. So if David hadn't trusted and put his own plans together, ahead of God, and said, this is enough. I've had enough, and just rightfully could have won after Abner, he didn't. He respected that God was going to do it his way. So check this out. So Abner makes a deal and says, hey, I'm going to be loyal to you. Joab comes back from a battle, and they said, hey, Abner, your arch enemy that just killed your brother, was just here. And he was like, Joab's like, David, you let him escape. Like, what's going on? So Joab sends messengers, says, get Abner back here. And he fakes like, hey, I heard you're joining troops with us, like joining up with us. That's cool. Come here. So he came, and as soon as he got close, he smote him under his ribs, and he killed him instantly. He stabbed him. So anyways, David wasn't happy about that. He mourned with Israel. He followed the coffin to all this stuff. He was like, he never rejoiced when his enemies died. So that's Abner, right? But before he died, Abner is bringing together the nation for David. Then who remains is Ishbosheth, the king of Israel. Ishbosheth is in his house. These two guys that were serving, that were in his army, sneak in in the hottest part of the day when he's resting, and killed him and cut his head off, and spent a whole day getting back to David and said, hey, here's his head. God gave you vengeance. Was David happy? He ordered those men to be put to death. He's like, you don't touch God's anointed. So David respected that position. But God takes out Abner, the general that came against him all those years, and he takes out Ishbosheth, but he uses Abner to unite the country and try to bring them to him. It's crazy. It's like God had all those pieces, and if he would have tampered with any of it, you know what I mean? It's like the people knew that he didn't do it. They could see that God did it. And when we let God do it, it gives him glory, and he uses that. You know what I'm saying? So it was just such an encouragement. That was such an encouragement. And the kids are talking about these bullies at school. That's the theme lately. And I'm like, yeah, David had a bully. Saul was a bully. Really, the worst bully. Picture the president of the country is after you here. Anyways, so I'm just telling him, just like, and I like this. You guys have heard this illustration before, but like the little KFC knife. You're trying to fight your own battles, and God is standing behind you, being blocked by your efforts, and like, hey, I have my own ways, I can do this myself. And we just got to let him do that for us, So anyways, guys, that was just such an encouragement to wait on God, and that even though we can't see what he's doing, David wasn't even king for another 7.5 years, but it wasn't about that. It was about, look at this. Look at what it's like. If God has, look at Abraham. Abraham, received the promise way late in the game to have a baby, but yet he's such a huge cog in God's plan, because out of him came Isaac, Jacob, Israel, the tribes, came Jesus. You know, it doesn't matter. God can line it all up in his plan and make it count as part of that tapestry, you know what I mean? So it's like, it doesn't matter. And we look at things in terms of our own, like what our little world, you know, doesn't make much sense sometimes. But if we just surrender everything to God and just say, you know, I don't understand this, but I want to be a part of your plan and be faithful. Like David, just be faithful. Sorry, he was faithful as a shepherd boy. He was faithful to everything, you know, just being faithful and trusting God. So anyways, guys, this has been a long video, but thanks for watching. And yeah, I hope that's a blessing to somebody.